Welcome to Boring History for Sleep, wherein I take historical events or figures and remove all of the drama and excitement until all that's left is a snooze-inducing husk of the original topic. Because if there's one thing history has taught us, it's that nothing is actually interesting. I'm your host, and today we are going to find out what Cleopatra really ate for dinner. Cleopatra was the last active ruler of the Ptolemaic Kingdom of Egypt, a period of ancient Egyptian history that began in 305 BC when Ptolemy I, one of Alexander the Great's generals, took control of the Egyptian region after his buddy Alex died. See, after Alexander died, all of his friends and family got together and said, "Hey, who's going to take this giant-ass empire now?" And they ended up just splitting it up amongst themselves. So now instead of one big happy family ruling over everything, we had like 8 different families ruling over parts of everything, which led to some infighting. And one of those Alexandrian dynasties was in Egypt. They were called the Ptolemies, and they lasted from 305 BC to 30 BC. The reason they only lasted for 300 years is because Rome came along and decided Egypt would look real nice as a province. Thank you very much. Anyway, Cleopatra was the last pharaoh of this dynasty. She was born in 69 BC, and she ruled with her brother husband. Yes, they were married. Don't ask Ptolemy XIII. This guy apparently wasn't great at his job as king. According to Plutarch, he was lazy, and he liked to throw tantrums, like a child. He also went around executing people for saying his name too many times. Which, yeah, that's probably an insane amount of people. So Cleopatra was clearly fed up with him by 51 BC, because that year she launched a coup, deposed him, and then killed him. Oops, spoilers. So now she ruled Egypt alongside her younger brother Magas, who was only about 10 years old at the time. But no worries. Cleopatra was there to guide him on his way to becoming a fine upstanding young ruler. Right? Just kidding. She didn't do any such thing. Instead, she basically made her 10-year-old brother figurehead and ruled as the true pharaoh. During her reign, she formed alliances with Rome and the Parthian Empire, dabbled in some naval warfare, and had a bunch of kids with both of her brothers. Good times. Cleopatra is one of the most famous women in history, which means there are lots of myths and legends surrounding her, including a lot of stuff about how she looked. Modern depictions of her usually show her wearing a bunch of gold jewelry, darker skin, darker hair, full makeup, the whole 9 yards. But none of that is based on any contemporary accounts of what she looked like. You see, the only descriptions we have of what Cleopatra looked like come from 2 Roman historians, Plutarch and Cassius Dio, and neither of them say anything about her having dark skin. It's generally accepted that Cleopatra was actually more likely closer to this. Yeah, that's a bust of Cleopatra. You can tell it's her because it says so right on the back. Don't be stupid. Anyway, it's pretty widely accepted that she had fair skin, red or blonde hair, and blue or green eyes, the stereotypical white, Western European Barbie doll type, not the darker-skinned Egyptian queen type. Now, this doesn't mean that Cleopatra wasn't Egyptian. She just happened to look more like her Greek and Macedonian ancestors than like her actual Egyptian ancestors. Okay, enough world building. Let's get to the food. If you're interested in what Cleopatra ate, you've got 2 main sources to go off of, both of which are fictional stories written hundreds of years after Cleopatra lived. First, you've got Shakespeare's play, Antony and Cleopatra, which is set, as you might have guessed, in ancient Egypt. In it, Cleopatra appears as an exotic queen who loves to throw lavish feasts. In one scene, she invites Antony over for dinner and instructs her servants to make sure he gets the royal treatment. Servants come out pushing barrels of wine, tables piled high with food. At one point, Cleopatra even has to remind her attendants to not bring out too much food because she doesn't want Antony to die of a food baby. Now, this is a play written in the 17th century, So obviously, it's not going to be accurate in its depiction of what Cleopatra might have eaten. But some of the foods mentioned are still pretty telling. For example, Cleopatra describes figs and nuts being ground together with vinegar and honey, and then mixed with lentils, barley, flour, and cheese. Now, these are all foods available in ancient Egypt, so that's good. But Shakespeare wasn't exactly known for his healthy recipes. In fact, I'd go so far as to call this whole passage disgusting. Get that nasty stuff away from me. Okay, your second source for what Cleopatra ate is the 18th century novel Cleopatra by Anne K. Green. In it, Cleopatra hosts another banquet for Mark Antony, and again, the details are pretty wild. A servant approaches Antony while he's bathing and asks him what meat he wants served up that night. And when Antony tells them lamb, kid, pork, beef, goose, duck, venison, swan, peacock, crane, bustard, parrot, the servant replies, "Your choice shall be presented," which, wow, that's a lot of options. That's a pretty confident servant. Are there that many swans in the palace kitchen? I hope not. There are also other more pedestrian mentions of her eating dates, cucumbers, figs, grapes, and pomegranates, as well as a general fondness for all kinds of fruit. Also, if we're supposed to believe Shakespeare and Green, Cleopatra must have been the biggest foodie of all time, because in both of their stories, she likes to go to the marketplace, disguised as a commoner, and hang out at taverns and brothels, getting drunk and carousing like any normal person would. I mean, come on, if you're going to write a story about a legendary queen, you got to make her a bit more relatable, right? The problem with both of these sources is, well, they're fiction. Just because Shakespeare and Green wrote these stories down doesn't mean that these stories are true. We have no evidence that Cleopatra hosted banquets with 14 courses of swan meat, or that she ever even left her palace grounds. Granted, we also have no evidence that she didn't do any of these things, but it's just hard to say for sure. What we do know is that Egypt was an agricultural society, so they had access to all kinds of fruits, vegetables, grains, and meats. Their wealth might have afforded them some luxury ingredients as well, like imported spices and maybe even chocolate, since cocoa beans did grow in Egypt and were used as currency there. But we don't have any evidence as to what Cleopatra specifically liked to eat. If we were going to guess, though, based on what other wealthy Egyptians from the period were eating, she probably enjoyed dates, figs, grapes, pomegranates, and other dried fruits, as well as things like roasted goose, duck, or pigeon, fresh fish from the Nile River, and maybe even some imported tuna. She may have also indulged in some Egyptian delicacies, like natron-soaked gazelle, which, yikes, that sounds bad, or grilled eel with garlic and onions. Now, if you were an ancient Egyptian eating dinner, you'd probably be doing it on a mat on the floor, either with your hands or with a kind of spoon. If you were Cleopatra, though, you'd probably be dining on couches or reclining chairs, maybe even using silverware. Depending on the source, Cleopatra was either a vegetarian or a vegan. Both of these diets are possible in 2023, but in ancient Egypt, it was a little more difficult. There's a chance that Cleopatra simply didn't eat meat or fish, but she almost certainly still ate eggs. After all, eggs are technically not meat, so maybe she was okay with eating those. But considering the sheer amount of meat mentioned in Shakespeare and Green's stories, it seems like she may have just been a really heavy meat eater. So what does Cleopatra's diet teach us about ancient Egypt? Not much, really. Her taste in food isn't something unique to her. Any wealthy Egyptian could eat the same stuff. She just had more money, so she could afford to eat more of it. Honestly, the main takeaway from all of this is that rich people are gross. I think that's a lesson we can all agree on. Thank you for watching. If you liked this video, please like the video. If you disliked it, dislike the video. Check out our other videos. Comment below with video suggestions. And don't forget to subscribe.